What's up guys, welcome back to another Warhammer Tacticus video. In today's video, I'm doing a guide for the Kharn Legendary Release event. So I was actually lucky enough to be able to unlock this character during his first run, but if you weren't able to unlock him this time, that's totally okay. Don't worry too much because he'll be back 2 more times and you could just use this guide as a way to prepare yourself for when that comes. Alright, so before we get into the guide, let's just take a closer look at Kharn and see why you might actually want this character in your roster. So he has the traits, Blessing the Corn, Rapid Assault, so he gets additional movement, which is great, and Final Vengeance. His passive ability, after he performs a normal attack, he gets a second attack against an adjacent enemy, which is great. And also, if you defeat an enemy this battle, at the start of his turn, he'll move 2 hexes and attack the nearest unit. So this can also attack your allies if there are no enemies in range, so that's one thing to be careful of when using this guy. His active ability is just a great multi-hit, multi-target damage ability, which is just amazing for dealing out damage with damage buffers and just killing a ton of enemies at once. And he's also a melee-only character with a 4-hit eviscerating melee attack. So where I think this guy is really going to shine is in 2 particular game modes, and that's going to be in Guild Raids as a damage dealer alongside Ragnar, who buffs melee-only characters. I think this guy just has so many multi-hits. He's a melee-only character, and I think he's just going to, and he gets so many additional hits per turn with his passive ability that I think he's just going to absolutely chew up bosses alongside Ragnar, and that he's going to be a mainstay in that team. I also think he's definitely going to shine in Tournament Arena. One, because he's a melee-only character, and Ragnar and his team is already pretty meta there, but also I think just in any team, all the multi-hits he gets and multi-target is just going to decimate all of your enemies really quickly and get out of hand really fast. Where I think this guy might get a little overhyped in is game modes like Legendary Release events, because although he has these multi-hit, multi-target attacks and with his passive he gets additional attacks, he does move every turn, and Legendary Release events, these longer form difficult game modes, are a lot about positioning. So if you have this guy parked next to Rotbone, for example, getting healed and getting saved when he dies through Rotbone's passive revive, and he just moves out of the way every turn and gets killed, it's not going to be super great against tougher enemies. So I think he might not shine there as much as some people might think. But other than that, I think overall he's going to be a really great character. I think he's definitely going to shake up the meta in both guild raids and PvP. So let's take a look at how I actually got this guy. So with full transparency, I did buy the $20 pack that gave you additional skulls every time you got skulls. And with that, I was able to just barely get him. I was able to just buy the last chest. I got to exactly 400 out of 400 to unlock the character. I can't really progress any further. But I will say, as a free-to-play, with my progression, you should still be able to get him as long as you do all your missions every time for each event. I just wanted to get him as soon as possible so I'd be able to level him up quick and then make some content with him. So I'll show you each of the tracks I did, how far I got, and then I'll show you the teams I used, and as well as the levels and stats of all my characters. So for the alpha track, I got up to battle 8, and I couldn't clear up to battle 9. And I cleared completely up to stage 7, and battle 8 I only cleared the no psychic lineup. For beta, I got up to stage 9 again, and I was able to fully clear up to stage 7. And then for gamma, I cleared up to stage 5 and then beat stage 6 through 9. So I'll just quickly go over what my characters actually look like so you guys can see, and then I'll start a battle in each track and show you all the different teams I used. So I have Rivas at gold, Aleph Noah at gold, Bellator at silver 3, Angrax at gold, Malletus at gold, silver 2, gold. And these are pretty much all the characters I used, but I'll show you exactly who got used. So that's my full roster. These are the characters I don't have. Characters that I would have used if I did have them, so if you guys have these characters, definitely level them up. They'll be super useful to you. Are Marnius Calgar. He's great alongside Isabella just because he has the Mark 10 Gravis trait and he's just a great unit. As well as Brother Jaeger. his pass ability is great, and he's really great with Isabella as well. So if I had those two, I would have definitely made use of them. Some of the other characters, I'm sure you could slot them in, but they wouldn't be so important. But those two would definitely make it a lot easier for you. So first up, we have the Alpha track, and you're not allowed to use Imperials, which made this track the most difficult towards the later levels. As you can see, I was only able to clear up to 8 here, where I could get up to 9 and potentially even get some damage on stage 10 in both Beta and Gamma. And that's pretty much just because of Isabella. So these are the characters you're able to use, and I'll show you all the teams that I actually did use. So my team for No Psychic, this was just to push as far as I possibly could. I just included all my best units. So we have the trio right here of Rotbone, Angrax, and Malladus. They're amazing together. And then the dynamic duo of Aleph, Null, and Rivas. So everyone could get healed up. I remember during stage 8, my Rotbone team failed way before my Rivas Aleph Null team, just because Aleph Null's healing is so insane and Rivas is so tanky. So those two were actually able to fully clear that stage for me, while the other 3 died pretty early on. As for my other teams, for Resilient as well as No Psychic and No Summons, I used this team with just these 3. So Rotbone, Malladus, as well as Corrodius. If you have these guys leveled up too, I would definitely recommend slotting in Ascor, as he's a really good unit and will help buff your other Chaos units a bit. Besides that, for the other tracks, I used multi-hit and ranged attacks. I used Abraxas, Archimados, Ahriman, Calandus, as well as Yazagor. So my main objective with this team was to just get as many Abraxas summons out during the first turn as possible. So I used Abraxas' ability, got a full round of summons, then reset him with Yazagor, and then used another psychic attack to start triggering him to go off again. And then after that, I would have the 10 to 12 Abraxas summons, and then I would just try to rush all my characters as close to the spawn points as possible. And with all the summons crowding the area, this would mean only a couple of their units were actually able to spawn each turn, which let me easily kill them off and keep my characters healthy. So that was my main strategy with that team, and that team worked pretty well up to like stage 7. And then my Abraxas' summons, even though his active abilities at level 38 just were too weak, they would die too quickly, that strategy kind of fell apart. So those are the teams I used for this. Next up, we have the Beta track. So for this, there's only no Tyranids allowed, so no Tyrant Guard pretty much. So this made this track a lot easier for me. The team I used was, I'll show you all my teams now. So this was the team I used to progress as far as I possibly could. I had Isabella as well as Brother Burchard, Rotbone, and Bellator, as well as Aleph Null. Aleph Null was kind of just like a character I threw in. He died like right away, but I only needed those 3 to be able to surround Isabella in the corner. But for this team, I definitely would recommend, if you have it, using either Marnius Calgor, or you can use Yarick if he's leveled up a bit. Both of those guys will do really great things for you and will be way more tanky if you want to have like a full 4-man circle around Isabella. But basically my main strategy here was just turtling around Isabella, and it took a long time. It wasn't like super quick. It was just whittling down the enemies while Isabella healed everyone up. But that let me get this far. For the other tracks, I used for mechanical as well as no Terminator armor and no big target, as well as minimum 3 hits. I used Aleph Null as well as Anufet and Emospec. These were the only characters I had that fulfilled this requirement, so it was basically just an Aleph Null team The other two I didn't really like get that much mileage out of. My emo spec is pretty low level, so I would recommend if you're going to try to do this 3-man path, it will get you a lot of points. As you can see, it fulfills all the requirements besides the flame one, which is really great. So I would recommend for this team either having a really high LF null who can just solo it for you, or having a really high emo spec, because if you just have emo spec with his Overwatch passive ability parked near the spawn points, he can kill a ton of all the enemies that come out, which is really amazing. So looking back, I definitely should have focused a bit more on emo spec to make this easier on myself, but I've been preparing more for the Ragnar event. This one I was just lucky enough to be able to have those units already pretty high. Anu Fet was also really great here, and that's because of his active ability. Otherwise, him himself was pretty useless. I would kind of just try to hide him while I rushed LF null forward and emo spec forward to get his Overwatch off while LF null healed him, and just spawn the summon so I could save myself from some damage. And I just waited until the turns went by until I can get a full round of Anu Fet summons, and those summons towards the end of the game, when my emo spec had already died and my LF null was kind of pinned down just healing herself every turn, were able to clear out all the enemies for me. So that ended up being a really lucrative track for points. I would definitely focus on these 3. If you guys don't have Anu Fet, I think these are the only 3 units I have that could actually even fulfill these requirements. I think maybe Morgan Val could, but there's not too many other units, so I would say just level up whoever you have. Your main carry here is going to be LF null, and as well as emo spec if you get his passive high enough. And then for my last team, which was the flame team, I used Rivas, Abraxas, Ahriman, and then the last 2 were just whatever I had leveled up a bit, so Toth and Vindicta. My main strategy here was pretty much just having Rivas tanky enough to be able to pretty much solo, as well as getting out as many Abraxas summons as possible. There's no Yazagor here, so you can only get out 1 full round, but usually with that 1 full round, as long as I played my cards right with Rivas, taking most of the damage, the summons were able to pretty much clear out everything else. I was lucky enough to have Ahriman, so he did a lot of work for me too. But I would say if you don't have Ahriman, just slot in whoever else you have, like Rask would be fine. And I would definitely recommend, for if you don't have some of these characters like Rivas or Ahriman, your main carry here would probably be Vindicta. Just get her abilities leveled up, and then she can do the AoE fire. Just keep her kind of away from the enemies so they can't get too close to her, and just spam out her AoE fire every turn, and that should do pretty good work for you. So for the last track, the beta track, you can't use any 1000 Suns, so you get no Abraxas here. So I'll show you the teams I used. My late game team was just a no mechanical, no flying team, and I used the same team I did for the other track to get as far as possible, and that was just an Isabella Turtle team with Malladus, Angrax, Rockbone, and Brother Burchard. But you could just kind of slot in whoever you want that's gonna be tanky enough to survive with the Isabella's healing for this. For the other teams, what I actually used was I did no flying, no mechanical. I did the 5-hit team. So this was my 5-hit team. I used Rivas, Aleph Null, Bellator, Anshi, and Emospec. Anshi, if you don't have him, is not super important here. The only reason I used him is because I'm lucky enough to have him, and he's just useful for resetting either Bellator or Aleph Null to get more summons out. But your main trio here is going to be Bellator, Aleph Null, and Rivas. Aleph Null and Rivas are great together because Aleph Null can heal Rivas, and Rivas is pretty tanky. And then Bellator I kind of just used towards like the later rounds to get a full like lineup of summons to be able to clear out the enemies, so I didn't have to wait like forever for Aleph Null and Rivas to just go one by one. So that was my team for this. It was pretty good. I was pretty confident that I could get far with just this team. Where I started to struggle was in the piercing lineup. I did piercing and no flying and no mechanical. So I had Eldrion, Tyrant Guard, Janezar, Calandis, and Incisus. My main like carry here was really Tyrant Guard with his passive ability to reduce the damage, as well as Eldrion just being a psyker and able to kill 2 enemies per turn. So that ended up working out decently okay. I started to fail at round 5 and 6, so I didn't get super far with this team because I don't have them super leveled up. If you want to focus on this track, you do get a lot of points from it for the full piercing lineup. So I would say to focus on Tyrant Guard, his passive ability, just getting it high as possible, as well as Incisus. Incisus is kind of a sleeper in Legendary Release events, although he's not a very good character in these events because he's a piercing character and the only healer for that track. He really does shine. So if Incisus was a bit higher and able to heal a bit more, I definitely would have been able to get further with this team. For the physical only team, it doesn't matter if you do no flying or not. You only lose access to Neurothrope, but we get access to mechanicals here, so I used Tangita. Tangita was really great. He was like my main carry for this, as well as Tyrant Guard. Those were like this was like my main combo, and then I just slotted in whoever I had decently high levels, so I used Cutscoden as well as Calandus. Both of those were not the greatest picks, but I kind of just focused on getting as many summons out with Tangita as possible. And last, I just slotted in Giba Scraps so I could get his tank up. I have his tank at like level 29, so even though he's only a bronze character, his tank was still pretty strong and did some work for me. I would recommend, if you want to do better in this track, just getting Tangita as high as possible and his ability as high as possible to make his summons super strong, as well as Tyrant Guard's passive ability. That passive, both of those characters are going to be useful in a ton of Legendary Release events, so it's not a waste to do them just for this event because you will get more mileage out of them. Other than that, another useful character here could have been Makotep, just because of his passive healing for mechanicals, just healing up Tangita and his summons. That would have been good. Snotflaga could also be decent just because he's able to pump out summons every turn. So if I had these characters higher level, this is the team I would have used, and I definitely would have been able to get a bit further with it. But as it stands, it was a pretty difficult track. I usually struggle with the full piercing as well as the full physical lineups, so I just used whatever characters I had and then focused most of my efforts towards the other tracks and the better teams I had. Alright, so that does it for how I was able to actually unlock him. I'm just going to go over quick some of the most key units I found that guys should level up as high as possible to get as far as you can in this event. For me, that was Rivas as well as Aleph Null. These two were a great pair and really helped me push into the later tracks. This was probably my best team after Isabella, and they were even able to out-survive my Rotbone and Malladus team, which was really crazy and surprising to me. So these guys together work really amazing together and are just a great combo. Other than that, obviously Rotbone and Malladus, if you don't have Rotbone, you should have enough time eventually to get him through the guild war just by buying his shards. It'll be a while before Kharn comes back, but his Legendary Release event will be back 2 more times, so don't stress too much about getting him right away. I would put more of your effort towards getting Ragnar, whose final event is coming next month, and I already have a guide for that posted on my channel, so if you're interested in that, be sure to check it out. These two will also be great in that event, so I would definitely recommend focusing on those two. Other than that, one of my main characters here was definitely Abraxas. His active ability is just super great. Alongside Yazagor, it's just great because you can totally rush the spawn points and limit the amount of enemies that come out each turn, which is really useful for protecting yourself. So Abraxas was definitely a great unit. Other MVPs, definitely Tyrant Guard. I don't have him super high level, and those teams are weak points for me, so he didn't shine as much as some of the other characters. But for you, if you don't have, say, Isabella, I would definitely focus on getting as much points as you can through those tracks, and you could definitely do that via Tyrant Guard and his passive ability, which reduces damage you take. Other than that, Isabella was key. She's always key. She's the best healer in the game. She was super useful. And Tangita was great. I think Tangita is a bit underrated for Legendary Release events. He's a physical character, so I always end up using him alongside Tyrant Guard, and those two are a great combo for me. Same with Eldrion. He's also a piercing character, so him and Tyrant Guard are usually a typical combo I use for those tracks. But other than that, some units I didn't have that I kind of wish I had for this event that maybe you might want to focus on if you're super bent on getting this guy and struggling with him are Incisus. Incisus is definitely a sleeper pick. He's piercing only. He's a one-hit only, melee only, and piercing, and he's also a healer, so he fulfills a lot of requirements that none of the other healers do, so you can really lean on this guy with your Tyrant Guard teams to heal up your team. So he's pretty underrated. He's really good in these events. You could focus on him, as well as Toth. I feel like Toth is also kind of slept on a bit. He's super tanky, and he gets to heal himself each turn. His damage output is really weak, but if you have this guy high enough leveled, he will just be able to fully heal himself each turn. He's also a flame character, and that was a new requirement, so that was a more difficult one because there's not many flame characters. But I think this guy at high enough levels would be able to solo tracks totally on his own. The only problem with him is that it might take you a really long time because he does not deal a lot of damage. But other than that, I really hope this guide helped you out. If you have any questions or further advice for people trying to get Kharn, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll either reply or pin some comments that give good advice so you guys can get some more perspectives on this event, because I only have my perspective. This is only his first round, so don't feel too discouraged if you didn't get him. The only reason I bought the pack was because I want to make some content with this guy, and it's better to just wait for the next events. He'll get easier and easier to get, and you'll have more time to prepare. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this helped you out. If it did, please be sure to leave a comment and let me know whether or not you got Kharn. And if you're seeing this in the future for the next Kharn event, good luck. And I know if you just try hard enough, you'll be able to get him. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. You could also use my refer a friend code right here in Tacticus. You'll get 100 free Blackstone. I'll also get some rewards as you level up. So it's just a great way to help each other out. And I'll see you guys in the next one.